Welcome to Secret Story. Sophie had been disappointed not to have had a little fun with Brian earlier, but she had loved the house. She waited impatiently for Mike to get home. She was glad the Wilsons trusted her with the keys and could not wait to impress Mike with the house. Sophie's mum dropped the twins back home shortly before Mike arrived. Sophie had already changed back into jeans. Do you want to go and see the house? We can take the twins, too. I have the keys. Sophie was surprised at how excited she sounded. Mike complained about the traffic and a headache, and they agreed to go in the morning. Saturday was bright and sunny, and Mike agreed to drive them all as long as they were back for the big game on TV that afternoon. Mike could not help but get excited about the house and moving. The house was better than he expected, though the immaculate large garden worried him a little. All the way home, Sophie and Mike made plans, talked about decorating, and agreed they should move. They also hoped to be in by the end of the month, just 3 weeks away. Monday came, and Sophie went and told Brian and his wife they would love to move into the house. Brian's wife asked her to call her Mildred and hoped they would be happy. Brian said they could move whenever they wanted to, and Sophie said they hoped to do it by the end of the month. Mildred bustled around, serving tea and delicious homemade cakes. Afterwards, Brian offered to drive Sophie home. On the way, he asked if he could help with the move. Sophie said Mike would try to borrow a van from work and some friends to help with lifting. She said she could get all the boxes she needed from work and thought they would be okay. Brian apologized that he could not come in as he dropped Sophie home. Enjoy these, and thank you again for the chance to move. Bring them back next time you see me. Sophie kissed him on the cheek before she walked to the front door and waved as Brian drove away. On Wednesday afternoon, rent day, Sophie was delighted to see Brian and Geoffrey standing on her doorstep. They followed her into the kitchen, both offering help with her house move. Geoffrey said he could arrange 2 or 3 staff members from the hotel in a 7.5-ton truck with a driver, much better than driving there and back all day in a little van and all that carrying, he said. Sophie asked how much it would cost, and Geoffrey smiled and said he was sure they could work something out. Sophie thanked him and said she would check with Mike this evening and let him know. Sophie smiled to herself, thinking about how much money her arrangement was saving. What would you both like to do today? We have all afternoon, and I am feeling very indebted to you both. Brian put his hand in his pocket. Thank you for these, he said, handing them to Sophie. Sophie knew what she wanted to do. As she had been fantasizing about both men her at the same time. What about another of your stories from university or something sexy and naughty that you have never told Mike? Brian said. Geoffrey nodded in agreement, and they both pulled a kitchen chair out and sat facing Sophie. I can tell you about a bit of a lesbian experience I had. In my second year, I was in a flat shared with 2 other girls. One was a Chinese girl whose wealthy parents were funding her. She was quite studious, and her father forbade her from having any boys in the flat. She did not need to share as her parents paid the whole cost, but she wanted some company. The other girl was also quite studious and very quiet. One weekend, her mum and sister came to visit and stayed over. They borrowed my room, and I went in with Chen in a king-sized bed. I woke up in the night needing the loo to find Chen not quite spooning me, but with one hand on my boob. I got up and went to the bathroom, and when I got back in bed, I laid awake thinking about it. A few minutes later, Chen was almost spooning me again with one hand on my hip. It sounds lovely and beautiful, Geoffrey interrupted, perhaps one for another time. Have you anything a little naughtier? We had quite a few nights in bed together after that, but yes, let me think of something else. Sophie thought for a minute. What about Gay Ray? I think you called him. Geoffrey said, I can tell you about the study group that started in year 1 of politics. There was me, one huge black guy, and 3 other girls. By the start of year 2, only me and the black guy met regularly. Chen would let him come to the flat, as everyone knew him as Gay Ray, and he had no interest in girls. One study evening, I was suffering from a cramp in my feet, so Ray offered me a foot massage. I got some essential oil from the bathroom. I was wearing a long, sleepy t-shirt that came down past my knees and nothing underneath. Ray spent time massaging my feet and was good at it. He then moved up to my calves and lower legs. Sophie lifted her leg onto a chair in front of Brian and Geoffrey and ran her fingers up her shin to demonstrate. Sophie smiled and continued the story. I slouched down on the sofa and relaxed. Ray pushed the bottom of my t-shirt up to mid-thigh and carried on massaging up past my knees. I was getting turned on. I knew Ray was not interested in me, so I decided to be a little daring. He asked me to turn over and moved back as I did. No one had done that to me before. He went slowly and gently. He confessed that he had liked me for a long time but was not attracted to girls. I asked why he was so good at giving oral to girls. He told me a sort of sad tale, to be honest. He told me that when he was growing up, his two older sisters used to make him do it to them and would not let him stop until they were satisfied. He also said they would never pleasure him or let him pleasure himself while they were there. Sophie sat back down, opposite the two men, and smiled. "I've never done anything like that," Brian said. "It was never a thing that I even knew about in my youth." "Don't you believe it?" Geoffrey said quickly. "It has always been a thing. In Greece, it was quite popular to prevent babies. Do you want to come up to the bedroom? I'm changing the sheets later, so we will be comfortable and safe." Sophie led the men to the stairs and walked slowly up ahead of them. She knew they could see up under her skirt. In the bedroom, she helped both men. She hoped her plan for them would work today. Sophie stood, both men soon joined her. Sophie looked around at Geoffrey and smiled as she said, "Look in the bedside drawer, at the top." Geoffrey pulled the drawer open and saw the bottle of lube Sophie had hidden there earlier. Geoffrey needed no second bidding or encouragement. Today, she had them both at the same time, which thrilled her hugely. Brian pushed himself fully inside and held still, asking if Sophie was okay. "Mr. Wilson and Geoffrey have offered help with a van for the move," Sophie said, hearing them talking on the stairs. "They asked to have a quick look and see if a bigger van or truck would be better." A moment later, the two men appeared on the stairs. Brian looked quite red in the face. Geoffrey took over and bluffed his way through sizing a truck. They shook hands with Mike and left with Brian, thanking her for the rent and confirming they were all up to date. Sophie still had the rent money envelope in the kitchen drawer and smiled to herself. She was also relieved that Mike had not come home 10 minutes earlier and caught them all upstairs. "It's kind of Geoffrey to offer to help. I can't get the work van for another couple of weeks, and the move weekend is the playoffs, and no one wants to commit to helping for the day. I don't think we would be able to move by the month's end without his help. Do we know how much it will cost?" Sophie said he had offered that if they could just cover the cost of fuel and the wages of the men for the time they were there, that would be good. Sophie said he didn't think it would even be a couple of hundred. Mike went off to change and called down to ask what the mark on the mattress was. Sophie called back up, saying that she had spilled a half cup of coffee while bundling up the washing and had tried to mop it. She told him to leave it to dry, and she would deal with it later. Sophie's heart was banging in her chest, and she could feel her face blushing at the close call. "Welcome to Secret Story. I had just spent a night with Marg and had concocted a story to stop my wife Sue from being suspicious. After Marg returned home a couple of days later, I had a lot on my mind. Sue had accepted my explanation for not coming home, although Mike told me later that she had checked my story with him the next day. With Sue was becoming routine, like washing the dishes or mowing the lawn. I'm not saying it was not enjoyable, much better than wanking off in the shower, but it in no way compared with the experience that I had with Roz and Marg each day since Marg left. A letter arrived at my work from her telling me about her life and what she was doing. Every letter ended with the words, "I love you, guys." After 4 or 5 letters arrived, my boss took me aside and told me that all this mail was starting rumors and suggested that I open a private mailbox at the post office. He finished by saying, "Good luck, mate. I hope it works out for you. You're a good bloke and you deserve a better life." I opened the mailbox the next day and started to return her mail addressed to her best friend's address. One night Sue suddenly said, "What's wrong with you? You're just not with it. Don't you love me anymore?" It was more an accusation than a question. More a wake up buddy, you're not pulling your weight thing. I've got a lot of things on my mind and I've been working long hours. What have you got on your mind? I looked straight at her for a while, then thought sooner or later I will have to discuss it, so what better time than this? A guy at work told me that when I was away on that project just before I asked you to marry me, you were running around with a guy named Steve from up north. That would be Steve Martin. He's just a friend. I've known him for years. So what? Did you expect me to lock myself in a room for 2 months without talking to anyone? I'm not concerned about talking. There was more to what he told me. So what other bullshit did he tell you? I was hoping that you would talk to me about it rather than me having to make accusations. Isn't it about time you stopped trying to kid yourself? I do know. I've had my doubts over the last 7 years, but there are no doubts in my mind anymore, but I would like to hear about it from you. I don't know what you are talking about. I've got nothing to tell you. Oh, yes you have. It's time to come clean. I've had a paternal test done. You can't do that without my permission. Look, stop the bullshit. It's been done, so tell me what happened. It's too late now to avoid it. Accept that I know and start laying your cards on the table. I want to know what happened and how it happened. I want details, and I'm only telling you once, so don't leave anything out. She didn't respond, so I needed to push her further to get her to talk to me. If you are honest with me and tell me all about it, then we may be able to put it aside and get on with our lives. If you don't do that, then I'm out of here. I don't want excuses, I just want to know about what happened, how it happened and why it happened. I warn you, don't skim over anything, I want to hear all, including the details. There was a long pause with nothing being said. I just sat and looked at her. She could not look me directly in the eye, and then it poured out. About 2, maybe 3 weeks after you left, I was picking up my younger brother from work when Steve drove up beside me and said, "Hi." Steve and I had been lovers before you came along, and he was special to me at the time, but he took off down south with one of my good friends. Once I saw him again, I realized that I still had feelings for him. He asked me to come down to the beach to watch the sun setting with him. I explained that I had to run my brother home, but I would meet him there later. When I reached the beach, he was sitting in the passenger's side of his sports car with the seat pushed all the way back. He opened the door so that I had to sit on his lap. I was wearing a short skirt, I could feel he had a hard-on. We watched and talked as the sun set. All the colors in the misty clouds being reflected in the calm ocean, it was beautiful. He had a good reason not to, and also he always said anything worth doing was worth doing properly, if you know what I mean. He had a good reason not to. I asked. I don't understand. Why is that? She hesitated for a moment as if she did not want to tell me. I encouraged her to by saying again that I wanted all the facts. No bullshit. I reinforced that I needed to know all the details of what happened, how it happened and why it happened. Well, I'd rather not say, but seeing you insist on knowing everything. He was too big and any that fitted him would usually tear or break, and he said they sometimes hurt him. Anyway, that's what he told me and I believed him. Big? How big? I asked. Are you sure you want to know all this? I nodded. Are you sure that you want to know these things? She said again. The statement that she could not get satisfaction with others came as an insult to me, but it did explain her cheating behavior to some extent. But what it did say quite clearly is that her behavior was not likely to change any time soon, so I would have to decide if I would leave or accept it. I was finding her story extremely exciting, she continued. I knew that he had made my friend pregnant and then dumped her. I also knew that he had fathered a couple of kids to other married couples because he had previously skipped about it to me. If you remember, that is what I said. Just that I found out I was pregnant. If you had asked I would have told you the truth, but you never asked. I didn't lie to you, I just didn't tell you. Yes, I remember, I replied. It was obvious that recalling this was a big turn-on for her as it was for me. The term cuckold came to mind as she talked, but I put it out of my mind because I was unknowing and an unwilling participant. Explanation, because it was obvious that there was little that she did not explain to me no matter how hurtful it was, and it all made sense. I still had one more important question, and although I already knew the answer, it was the critical test on her truthfulness. Have you seen him since? She looked down at the bed as if to think up an appropriate answer. I was not going to interfere. This was her test. Would she tell me the truth? Yes, was all she said. I don't want to lose you. There are things that I can't tell you. There are things that you would not understand or forgive me for. Tell me and make it the truth, and we will try to work it out. I know that you have been cheating on me now for a long, long time, and I haven't left yet. If you're truthful with me, we may work it out and get over it. If you lie, then it's over and I walk away. I know enough that if you lie, there is a good chance I will know. It was a bluff, but I needed answers on why she kept cheating on me. First of all, you must make me a promise. I nodded again. Kayline must never know. No matter what happens, Kayline must always think that you are her dad. I agreed. In fact, I told her that I have always regarded Kayline as my child and that would not change no matter what. She continued, he came back to see Kayline. You actually took the call from him, and when he asked to speak to me, you handed me the phone. Don't you remember, about 18 months after Kayline was born? You had asked me afterwards who it was, and I told you just an old schoolmate that was in town for a bit. I couldn't help but laugh at this. He was after a bit, all right, she continued. He said he wanted to see his daughter and that I had to meet him the next day when you were at work. I met him out the road at a farm that was owned by one of his friends. He invited me in, but I refused, so he got into the car. Kayline was in her car seat in the back. He was not interested in Kayline. He told me he wanted again. That gave me the best chance of denying him and stopping him getting at me. I didn't want to. I was married to you and life was great with us, but he had said that if I didn't meet him, he would ring you up and tell you about his daughter. You didn't want to. She hesitated again. Looked down and then looked me straight in the eye. Had got me pregnant and disappeared and left me to work it out all by myself. You don't understand the pressure it put on me. Remember, my parents had wanted me to have an abortion by telling the police. They then talked me into trying to tell you that it was your child, and I refused again. I did, however, agree to just tell you I was pregnant, but I told them that if you asked, then I would tell you the truth. You will also remember that I had stopped taking the pill about that time because you and I had discussed having another child, so I couldn't make the same mistake. I think this was about my second cycle after stopping the pill, and there was no way that I was going to do it to you again. So you turned him down. Again a silence, this time for quite a while. I could see tears welling up in her eyes again, then a quiet whisper. Again there were a lot of bruises. I had to hide them from you. I couldn't afford to let you see them because you would ask questions and I didn't have answers that I thought that you could accept. This shocked me to the core. I could not believe what I was hearing. Then our son could be his too. No way. He's not. He's yours. There is no chance at all that he is not yours. I drove from there to the chemist shop and my friend who works there got me a pack of the night after pills. She gave me 20 altogether and I kept the others for next time. What do you mean the next time? Again the hesitation. He blackmailed me. He told me that if I didn't give him what he wanted and do what he wanted, when he wanted he would tell you that Kayline was his. So how long did that go on for? It still is. Surely that can't be. That's 5.5 years. How often does he do you? He comes and goes. It only happens when he comes back into town. She stopped talking and just looked down. I was angry and couldn't speak. What could I say? All was quiet for a long time and then she continued. There's more, but I don't know how to tell you. It's probably better if you don't know. I'm so ashamed. She was crying continuously now. My emotions took over and I sat up and held her tightly. I was wiping her tears away and kissing her eyes. Just tell me. I have to know, no matter what it is or how much it hurts me. He's been selling me. Once he had control of me, he said, I want you to meet a few people. I went with him and there were several men. I didn't know what to do, but I eventually agreed. I told them all, if anyone tries to do me without protection, then I'm out of here. One guy went off and came back with a box. I then saw them paying Steve, so I don't believe this. We need to go to the police. No. We can't. Why? For Christ's sake, why? She was looking down again. She was avoiding my gaze. The first couple of times I was angry, I just laid there and let it happen, but the third time. He told me that if I did this he would give me $50 per man. I agreed just to get rid of him. I thought if I do this the nightmare would be over and gone. There was another long pause. A couple of times she started to say something but nothing came out. Suddenly she said, the reason why you can't go to the police is that I enjoyed it. It was fantastic and all the men knew I was enjoying it. I actually told a couple of them that if they stayed I would give them freebies. They were all gentle with me. There was another long pause. I waited patiently because I could tell that she wanted to say more. You probably will get angry with me for telling you this, but our marriage is over anyhow, so it won't make any difference. She delayed again. I should explain that I also knew you had not got me pregnant. I had to be certain that I did not get pregnant. I was actually thinking of going back on the pill. She had stunned me again, and that was the end of it. No. It stopped for a time and we went on to have our son, Tom, but I had given my phone number to one of the group. He had stayed in touch with me through the skate center. He would come out when I went skating and talk to me. I explained that we were trying for a child. He asked me if I would do it again once our child was born and I had recovered. After a while I agreed. He's a real gentleman. He's kind to me and makes sure that I enjoy it as much as he does. I just couldn't say no to him. So that's why you're late home each week after skating? Yes. That's why I always run to the shower when I return. What about Steve? Steve came back again a while ago when we were out water skiing. You were in the boat. He came up to me and said, come with me, I want to talk. I went with him because I didn't want you to find us together. As we walked away he said to some of the guys, are you coming? One of them said quietly, why? Steve replied to him, she's going to put out for us. I didn't know what to do. I was really angry with you, so I didn't resist. They all 6 of them. Carol had turned up out of the blue and told us that the boat had broken down. She joined in with us. I was glad because it took some of the pressure of me and I did not want to be there. After when we returned you had gone home, which frightened me a bit, especially when they told me that Roz went with you. She hesitated again, then looked me straight in the eye. I know you did so that you could get even with me. When they told me I felt like going back and doing them all again. I was so angry with you. I didn't answer the question or comment. Is there more? Yes, probably, but I can't think clearly right now, but it is important that I tell you that I love you. Guys, but I also have to tell you I am not in love with you. I want to keep you as my husband. You love me but you're not in love with me. What does that mean? It's difficult to explain, but I'll try. We are close all the time and I feel attached to you. We talk together and seldom argue, and you always consider my needs usually before your own. But this is hard for me to say because it will upset you and I have never wanted to hurt you. If you had not forced me to tell you all these things, I don't think that I could ever have told you what I have tonight, maybe some of it but not all. Spit it out. Don't keep bullshitting. Okay, I'll give it to you straight. Without it I just can't survive. When I go to sleep at night I don't dream about us. I feel it in my dreams. It is the reason that I wake you up in the middle of the night doesn't ease the pain. What do you mean the pain? The issue is that Steve has me up big time. It just won't go away, so I'm stuck with it. So what I'm saying to you is I want our marriage and I'll do almost anything for you to keep you, but it has to be conditional. Those conditions are that every Tuesday and Friday nights you must let me have what I want, and in return I promise at all other times to be the best wife that any man could ever have. This angered me a little, so I came back. What if I want another woman? I stopped for a while and thought it. I'll really put the pressure on her. Well, I know Lynn. I'd like you and me to do her together. Actually, John is away at present. It is the perfect opportunity to invite her over and take it from there. You, Lynn and I think should be okay. I know you like her. She would enjoy that. I'll discuss it with her when I go to see her during the week. She and John are thinking of having a child. You could have helped them out. I had got an insight into her for the first time ever. Did she really think that I accepted it as a necessary part of our relationship? With that thought I rolled over and closed my eyes. As I drifted back to sleep she said, "There's a lot more that I need to tell you about yet. Thanks for listening to me. I've never had anyone who I could trust to tell it all to before." Then she kissed me. I could see in the moonlight that her eyes were red, and I knew that she had been crying during the night. She turned away and was immediately snoring. I had not felt this close to her for the last 5 or 6 years. Before long my dream switched back to Marg and how wonderful she had been to me. I awoke with the alarm going off. It was time to get ready to go to work.